All right, everyone, welcome back to our second show of the day, Conversations and Housing Concerns with the Bremerton Housing Authority and KCR. And of course, on the second Tuesday, we are joined by Kirsten Jewell. So fantastic, so awesome. So let me go ahead and bring her on up. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Marwan. Happy to be back. It's amazing that a month has already gone by.
It does go pretty quick, right?
Yeah,
All right.
very.
All right. And next is Matt Garrett. KCR, how you doing there, Matt?
I'm doing good. It is good to be here. Yeah, Kirsten, you're right. These podcasts are like time markers, and it is crazy how quick it flies. Yeah. So, but it's also good to take some time to reflect, Marlon. I always appreciate we get a little time to actually step out of our normal routine, almost like a little meditation on how we're doing.
You know, what's interesting too is because, you and KCR come on every week, that there's still so much information to share, even on a weekly basis, right? So much happens within 7 days. So it's pretty phenomenal. Oh, we also have Katie Sharp. Katie, how you doing today?
Doing well, thanks. I had a problem with the link because Jill sent an email in response to an older link, and I kept trying to click the link, and I was like, this one doesn't look like today's email. So.
I felt trapped with that too, Katie. That was my yes.
See, there's always an explanation. So it wasn't Marwan.
It wasn't you. No, I was like, I cannot get in, but luckily it clicked. I got it.
Nice. Well, I'm glad that you are here, and it doesn't look like you're on a boat today. Is that true?
That is true, but our boat's still in Port Townsend. I've been commuting.
Oh, really? Wow. How long is that?
An hour and 10 minutes.
Wow. Okay. So you're in the office right now?
Yes.
You're so close. I feel like I could reach out and touch you right now.
I know. I'm excited. Next step is getting the boat here. But it's all working.
Nice. All right. Well, Jill Stan will be joining us soon, but I did want to get right into it. Kirsten needs to leave promptly at 4. So let's go ahead and get into our conversation. I think that for those in the audience, what kind of boat do you have?
Oh, what kind of boat do I have?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's a 1985 Oyster 46 sailboat. And we used to live on a Catalina 34, so it's quite the upgrade.
That's a very nice boat.
It is it's our forever boat, we say. So that's why we're doing a bunch of work on it. Yes. And yard work, literally, in the yard.
Kirsten, would you live on a boat?
Would I live on a boat, or do I live on a boat?
Would you?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Really?
It was the right boat. Yep.
Wow. Matt, how about you?
I did live on a boat. My senior year in college, I bought a very cheap sailboat that was barely floated. But yeah, my buddy and I kind of lived on it, and it was a great time.
Oh, that's fascinating. I got to hear that story one day. That sounds pretty
I love hearing and living vicariously through Katie, because I do sometimes miss the sea salt mornings.
At this point, I miss it too, because our boat has been outside of the water.
That's right. You're in dry dock, right? Right now.
Yeah. So we're excited. The summer kind of disappeared, but 7 years so far on a boat for us. So
that's
amazing. The Catalina 34 is really impressive. I've been inside some 34. Mine was tiny too, but you have a family, right?
Yeah, I have 2 kids, a husband and a dog. Yes.
That is so impressive. Sorry, Marwan, I'm derailing us.
No, it's all good. See, these are the things.
Housing options, right? We have housing options here, especially by the water. So.
Yeah. But this is part of it too. We were lamenting with some other leaders here in the community about not having the opportunities just to have conversations with each other. And so this is part of it, right? It's like All right, let's get down to business. No, let's just a little bit and build relationship and community, and then that's important too. See, everyone's smiling. It's great, and it's definitely needed.
Absolutely.
All right, so now let's go ahead and jump in. We'll start off with updates, and because of Kirsten's time, I have Kirsten go first because we want to make sure that when she goes,
Oh,
we got
sure.
everything.
I do
Everything will
not
be
feel
good.
prepared. Let's
Ah,
see. I didn't expect that. Oh gosh, let's
you want to go
see.
second?
Well, I don't want to put either one of the other two guests on the spot. Are either one of you feeling more prepared to give an update?
Sure.
Oh, thank you, Matt. I will take a couple minutes to compose myself. I appreciate you.
No worries, no worries. I think our, Marwan, we do the Keepa updates, and we, as you know, and our wait list is still closed. I will say we did some projections, and we are confident that through the new year that our legal referrals and our buy and for organizations will still be able to submit referrals. So we're really good, and we feel good on that front. So that's positive. We're not opening up the wait list at this time. More information to come. We still need a little bit more time to really get through the wait list before we're comfortable making that announcement. So I know that's something you've been keenly asking about. So I promise this will be the first place that I announce it. And if we feel confident that we have funds for that reopening. So there's a few kind of complicating factors there. Which we can get into at a later time, but I think that's the status right now. But I did want to announce that we feel really good about the having funds for the buy and fors and the legals, right? For the buy and fors to finish their contract out, that for their latest contracts with the county, and then our legal partners, Dispute Resolution Center, Kitsap Legal Services, and Northwest Justice Project, that they can continue to refer in. And they've actually, for the past few months, they've consistently been referring at the highest rate. We've talked in between that 60 and 80. They've been really consistent with that referral. So we feel pretty good that we can maintain that amount into 2023 and hopefully beyond, right? Because those are folks that are really going to be evicted unless rent assistance kicks in. The only thing there is, as some folks are going through, right, that's the only way to get multiple rounds, is if you're actually in the eviction process. And of note is that there are some folks that they still have an 18-month cap, right? So if you hit that 18-month cap, there's nothing at that point that we can do. So that some folks are starting to fall into that, which is, again, what we've talked about, is this need for ongoing rent assistance. So that's our big KEPA update. Our housing update, we've really, a lot of our rapid rehousing programs are just not able to be opened just yet. I'll really hope to announce some more. We're really hiring right now, so please go to our website if you are interested. We're really trying to prioritize folks with all different types of experience, because there's a lot of different experience, including lived experience, that can qualify you for this job. But that's one of our biggest holdup right now is staff. And awesome, Marwan, you have it right there.
Always.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm just going to go down to employment while you're talking there. You can keep going there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, get involved, and it's career opportunities.
Thank you.
Perfect.
I see AmeriCorps is still up there. Did AmeriCorps come back?
No, we just haven't updated the website.
Oh, okay.
We need to update the website. We're just no longer able to support the AmeriCorps program. So, which is a bummer. All of us were sad to see that one go. So this one is case manager housing. First one. That's it.
All right. So housing and homeless services, housing and community support services not exempt, $17.90 an hour. Just quickly, the position summary: provide case management to households experiencing homelessness through our rapid rehousing, transitional, and emergency housing programs. Client barriers may include, but are not limited to, mental health, substance use disorders, eviction history, unemployment, and medical illnesses. The family development specialist will collaborate with other service providers in order to ensure each household is connected to the resources they deserve for their success. Case management activities include making stability plans, budgeting, housing search, landlord mediation, document collection, benefits planning, crisis intervention, and more. Um, Great benefits here: medical, dental, vision, life insurance, 401k after the first year. And look at that, high school or GED plus 4 years of experience, or an AA associate degree with 2 years of experience. And as uh, Matt was saying, lived experience is really important.
Yeah, we're
And then,
experience. We're not limiting that to professional. That can be all types of experience. So we're really, with just like our programs, right? We want to qualify folks in, not out, and especially if folks are passionate and want to work with this population, because this is challenging. And that's really the other reason why we're not able to open up some of our other rapid housing programs is our emergency motel program, which is really has a lot of momentum and going well, is just an extraordinary amount of work. So we've had devote a lot of resources to that program. That's where we take a lot of folks especially that are chronically homeless from encampments, and we match them up to a hotel room and then provide case management from there. And there's a lot of challenges, and that's definitely a lot of our bandwidth right now is being taken up there. But yeah, so that's our housing update. And then our last update that I wanted to announce, I know we have it on our website, but our Manette housing project, we did just finish our latest grant for that big effort. And this is the kind of the same program that Jill talked about for their 5 houses. They applied to the Housing Trust Fund. And so kind of similar, and BHA really helped us with that. So we're really hoping that we will be funded, and then that project we can start building. It's not huge, but it is 9 units in Manette, and we really hope that we'll have some good news to announce of that project being funded and we can start building.
awesome.
And Kirsten
I
helped
wanted to ask,
that, did a letter of support too, so definitely got to give a shout out to Kirsten too.
there we go. So I wanted to ask Matt, for the employment opportunities, are those immediate employment? Are you looking to fill those pretty rapidly?
ASAP, yes. So right now, Brenda would be the manager, Brenda Johnson. She's our housing manager, and she's out this week, but she was doing interviews up until she left last week, and then when she comes back, she's doing interviews as well. So yeah, she's interviewing, and we still have probably 2 to 3 more slots that we want to fill going forward.
Awesome.
And potentially even more with our emergency motel program, is where we might have some support staff as well. So we're definitely going to be looking to continue to hire in these next few months.
All right. Well, thank you for those updates. Kirsten, are you ready?
Thank you to Matt for buying me a little bit of time. So a lot going on as usual at the county. We are a small but mighty team. I wanted to mention, I think I mentioned this last time, but I might have not have, but we do now have posted finally the point in time count update. I think the data summary from the point in time count is now on our website. So go ahead and take a look at it. Interesting information on that. So that is now on the Housing and Homelessness Division website. Also, we have an update to the Kitsap Eviction Prevention Assistance data, also on the Kitsap County website, the KEPA website specifically. It's really amazing to take a little step back from all of the day-to-day work that we're doing on the Kitsap Eviction Prevention Assistance Program and just reflect on how many people have been helped and how much money has gone to pay landlords back for rent in arrears and utilities companies for rent in arrears. Through July 31st, we have spent more than $24 million in Kitsap County specifically on paying those unpaid rental arrears and utilities bills. And we've helped more than 3,300 households be able to stay stably housed during a global pandemic through the use of these funds. The vast majority of households, almost 70% of the households, are earning less than 30% of median income, which means these are households that are earning, for a household of four, $30,000 or less a year. So really some of the most financially challenged households in the community are the ones who are being helped the most by this program. So 70% of the households helped are earning 30% or less of area median income, which is pretty remarkable. And we have still some additional funding that KCR is working through their wait list, as Matt mentioned, on spending. So that this dollar amount and number of households helped doesn't include the households that are still on that waiting list that KCR is working through to assist, and additional households that are getting help through Dispute Resolution Center of Kitsap County and Kitsap Legal Services through those programs. So pretty remarkable achievement collectively for our community, for KCR, for Bremerton Housing Authority, Housing Kitsap, Coffee Oasis, and our amazing outreach partner organizations to have quickly deployed more than $24 million into the community during a global pandemic. So we're really proud of that work, and you can look at the data sheet and the latest statistics. We'll probably have another one posted with data through the end of August here in the next couple of weeks or so. It really takes some time for us to collate all the numbers and information, but really, really proud of all that work and the community effort to run that program and get it into the hands of people who really needed it.
So Kirsten, let me stop you there for a second.
Oh, of course, yes.
You started this conversation talking about how small and mighty you are, and that is true. And Kirsten and her office is constantly grinding. You just need to take a full time out and recognize that, right? You're proud of yourself and your staff. We're proud of what the county has done. We appreciate your efforts, and we just have to stop and say thank you. It's hard. There's a lot of work. The work's not done, but you got to take the wins when the wins come in. 24 million is huge, and it's impacted so many families. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you for the kind words. I absolutely agree with you. We do not take enough time out to pause and reflect and be grateful for the incredible partnerships that make these kinds of programs possible. One of the things that I think is kind of eye-opening when people first start learning about the homeless crisis response system is that most of the really hard work is being done by our nonprofit partner organizations like Kitsap Community Resources and Bremerton Housing Authority and a myriad of others. And most of that hard work is being done by the frontline caseworkers, the case managers who are meeting with people day in and day out, really, working with people who have extremely traumatic stories of being in crisis, and they are the real heroes of this work that's being done. I'm a mid-level bureaucrat and spend my days in meetings and pushing papers around and talking on the phone, and I could not hope to be able to accomplish what we accomplish in our community if it wasn't for our nonprofit partners and the amazing frontline staff that does that great work. On that note, I want to take a slight detour / rabbit hole and give a little bit of an update on some additional financial support for frontline staff. I think I've mentioned this before, but I just wanted to give an update. In the last legislative session, the state legislature wanted to recognize that staff working in the homeless crisis response system across the state have been doing incredibly difficult work, and many are not well paid and compensated for the amazing job that they've done over the course of the pandemic. So they set aside, I can't remember the number, like $30 million or some huge amount to provide a little extra stipend for people who are doing that frontline work in the homeless crisis response system. The way it will work is that that staff of qualified organizations will be able to apply directly to a third-party administrator hired by the Department of Commerce, who will be qualifying people and then sending them stipend checks for $2,000. And then if somebody receives one check, then they can apply again 6 months later for a second one, as a way to say thank you for sticking with it and continuing to do this important work. So that program was approved by the state legislature. The Department of Commerce has gone through a process and selected a third-party administrator to be the one who is collecting applications from frontline workers and distributing the checks. And I think that in the next, within the next month, we'll see information coming out about how qualified employees can make that application directly to the third-party administrator. So my goal is that every person in Kitsap County that is eligible for this fund, for getting these funds, is able to make an application and finds out about it. So I will be here on your show talking about how people can make an application, where to get that information as soon as I have it. And also we'll be putting out information through the Kitsap Housing and Homelessness Coalition and through our nonprofit partners. It is restricted to people who work for certain organizations on homeless crisis response who make under a certain income amount. It's not meant for administrators or managers. It's really meant for our frontline staff. So there are some restrictions on who's eligible, but that will become really clear and be advertised. So stay tuned for more on that. I'm very excited that that project, which I worked on during the last legislative session, is finally getting closer to getting money in the hands of people who deserve it.
Yep, that's a big deal too. Actually, G2 tried to be that third-party administrator for that.
Oh, did you?
That,
yeah,
we did. So we know about it.
I would have loved that. Yeah, that would have been great.
So a question that I think is going to come up, Kirsten, is would this be eligible for volunteers? Do they have to be 1099s, or would 1099s be eligible?
Yeah, good question. My understanding is it is staff people. So have to be employed by an organization that is a state, receives some state funds or local government funding, document recording fee funding for homelessness. I'm not the one setting the eligibility requirements. That's being done as the Department of Commerce interprets the legislative intent on this. And so I haven't seen exactly what the eligibility requirements are, but we will definitely be making that very public information and hoping to get everybody who's eligible able to make an application.
So
I'm pretty sure volunteers are not included in that.
But there's not the specific eligibility posted yet, Kirsten? That hasn't been
not that I'm aware. Yeah, not that I'm aware. The latest I heard is that they had selected the third-party administrator and that they were now in the process of getting that eligibility sorted out and specified. There's a lot of complexity in administering a program like this. Mm-hmm. One of the questions that I was asking about it is wanting to make sure that people who do receive the funding are aware that it is taxable income. So there is a tax liability with it. So even if you receive $2,000, you should probably be thinking about, making sure that you're aware. Now, most of the folks who will qualify for this are in lower income earning households and may not have any tax liability. So that might not actually be something that comes to bear, but I just don't want people to be surprised later if there's they have to report it on their tax returns. So that there's a lot of complexity with figuring out how to implement a program where members of the public can apply for money and then get sent a check, and making sure that it's only going to people who are actually eligible and all of that. So
stay tuned
that's
for
what we're
that
working on
as
right
more
now.
information comes out. Kirsten will
Yeah,
bring that to us and share all the details out.
yeah.
Do you know who the third-party administrator is that got selected?
Yes, they selected Live Stories.
It is Live Stories. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Those darn live stories. Next time, Gadget.
So I wanted to just kind of give a recap of a pretty big community meeting that happened last week. The Central Kitsap Community Council invited Jared and me, Doug Washburn, and Sheriff Giese to come and be on a panel to talk about the HEART program and kind of encampment response by the county. So that meeting happened last week, and I certainly was surprised by the number of people that showed up for that meeting. I think Marwan was there, and there was a standing room only. It was like, I think 100 or more people showed up. And I think that it was really the first opportunity that most of us had to talk about this topic in person in many, many years. And so there was real thirst for getting questions answered and having community dialogue and being able to have access to information about what the county's doing with regard to encampments. Jared gave a brief presentation on the HEART program, and then the council chair opened it up for questions, and there were a lot of questions. We answered questions for what felt like a long time, and it was really great to have Sheriff Giese there to be able to respond to questions related to law enforcement's role in encampment response and some of the challenges that they are facing legislatively with restrictions on what they can do or rules around what they can do. Doug Washburn was able to answer questions about kind of the larger human services resources that are available in the community. So everything from mental health services to veterans assistance, and there were some great questions about that. And then Jared, of course, answered questions about the HEART program specifically and what the process was like for responding to encampments and complaints about encampments. There was a lot of good questions. A lot of them were hard questions and questions that we hear frequently and questions that we ask ourselves. I think my overriding or my kind of the things I hope that people took away from that meeting are that the county is working hard on this issue. We understand that there's a lot of frustration and a lot of concerns about encampments and what people perceive to be a growing number of people who are living outside. And we have a full-time person whose only job is to work on encampment response. We do have a policy, and it is an extremely challenging environment in which to do this kind of response, because we have court decisions and legislation that very specifically create parameters within which we have to work doing encampment response. And so I wanted the audience to really understand that it is not a straightforward, like you could just go out and do what you want. There's a lot of rules and regulations and court case things that we have to work around. And so the county very carefully wrote this encampment response plan, or encampment response policy to be in accordance with all the rules that we have to follow. And then Jared Moran, who's our encampment response coordinator, actually kind of steps through those processes to make sure that the county's following the rules that are in place to protect people who are living outside and to protect communities. So I wanted the audience to really understand the complexity with which we are working in this environment. And then the other thing I hopefully came across is that we don't have enough resources to help everybody. So it's not that the county isn't doing everything we possibly can. We have a really big commitment to try to help people who are in encampments move into at least one step closer to permanent housing when they leave an encampment. But we don't have enough shelter beds, and we can't solve homelessness until we have enough affordable housing. And so we're working in a very constrained environment where we're trying to make really hard decisions about how to help people with very, very limited resources. So I think I was happy with the questions that were asked, and I was glad people were asking hard questions and that we were able to share some information. And I think there's interest in other, I heard that the Kingston Community Advisory Group is interested in having us come and speak at some point as well. So I think that we might be doing a little bit more of that as we can now gather in person. Speaking of the HEART program, we are in the process of putting together a web page on the county's website, on the Housing and Homelessness Division webpage, which will be specifically about the HEART program and encampment response. I'm just trying to get the content pulled together for that, and it'll give information to people about where they can make a complaint or express a concern about an encampment, and then kind of what the process is for the county going to do an evaluation of that encampment. And we're putting together an FAQ, frequently asked questions, so people can hopefully get some of their questions answered on the website as well. So stay tuned for that. It'll probably be ready in a couple of weeks for people to look at.
Kirsten, as they're making the website, will there be a space on there for like individuals or organizations that may want to, volunteer or drop off, ponchos or socks or things like that? Is that like a
That's not really something that the HEART program is set up to do. We don't really have a way to take donations or manage volunteers. We typically would direct individuals and organizations that are interested in that to one of our amazing nonprofit outreach groups. So Northwest Hospitality does a lot of outreach. They're great. Kimmy Stevens has a group called Their Voice, which specifically works with people who have animals and pets, and they're always looking for donations of pet food and pet supplies and things like that. Most of the shelters around here are always looking for donations of items that can help support people. So I think that's where we would direct people if they wanted to make a donation.
Now in the chat, Jeff is saying, he's saying a summary of outcomes would also be great, where everyone ends up if possible.
Yeah, we are tracking that to some extent for the people that we know after they leave an encampment. We have information about some folks, some people we don't know, and it's if someone gets involved in the homeless crisis response system and goes through coordinated entry and gets a shelter bed or a housing unit or something, then we have a way to kind of understand what happens for them over the long term. Sometimes people just want some short-term assistance, and we do our best to provide that as well. But Jeff, we're definitely paying attention to that. It's a strong commitment that I have to making sure that we're leading with compassion and making sure that people are getting, a step closer to permanent housing as they exit encampments to the extent that they want to. That's a great comment.
I think if I can jump in here, Marwan, it's worth noting that our system has really ramped up our capacity to serve folks that are really in this category. There's really a spectrum of vulnerability when you're talking about folks that are unhoused, and what we're talking about here is different than some of the folks that we've served in the past, and across the board: Salvation Army, Kids at Mental Health, the county, HEART program, and KCR. We're really expanding our work with folks that are in this category, really chronically unhoused, comorbidities, mental health, and substance use. And it is a tremendous challenge serving those folks. There really is limited places they can even. None of these folks are really would qualify for a traditional apartment, right? So our traditional rapid rehousing programs are limited in scope. So they can either go to Pendleton Place, right, which is 70 beds, but that's permanent supportive housing, so there's very low rotation, and they're already on their way to filling up. You have the Rescue Mission, which is about 60 beds right now. Kirsten, correct me if I'm wrong on any of these. And then you have Salvation Army, which is about 40. And then we have about 30 in our emergency motel program that are kind of dedicated for this use, and then another 20 that are being case managed, while they're being homeless. So that's not a huge, that's still under our point in time count numbers of around 400 folks that are homeless at any given time. So just to kind of compare the resources versus what we have. And these folks a lot of them need tremendous amount of assistance, right, of connecting, and just need time to stabilize and connecting. So it is a slow problem to solve, and it's incredibly resource intensive. And we are really leaning and throwing a lot more resources at this. Case management, hotels, we have different, permanent supportive housing now increasing, ramping up. But it's a problem that's slow to solve and takes time. There's no quick solutions to it because these folks have had serious trauma, as Kirsten was referring to. And also the recovery is a winding road, right? And then you throw in trying to connect with mental health services on top of that, and navigating the recovery system while also navigating the housing system. And that's why we have case managers, to help folks do that. But it is very service intensive, and it does take time.
And if I can add one thing, I think the thing that we're doing, I think that is really adding to our success is taking that time to build relationships with folks who are living outside in encampments, and bringing in amazing outreach teams from House Solution Center at Kitsap Community Resources, and the real teams from Agape Unlimited and West Sound Treatment Center, and Northwest Hospitality, and building relationships with people and really getting to know them, and trying to help them help us understand what it is that they need, is how we're able to be more successful making those connections for people. This is a really different way of approaching encampments than what you hear about sometimes in the newspaper about the sweeps that happen, where law enforcement will get involved, or a kind of a pretty severe impersonal kind of clearing out of an encampment happens, and people scatter, and there aren't a lot of resources available, and there isn't a time spent to get to know people and try to help figure out what is the next best step for them, and things like that. And this is like the opposite end of the spectrum. This is slow, intense relationship building, bringing resources in, trying to figure out how we can help people make that next step. So when we first started doing this, and we first hired a heart coordinator, I think there was a lot of fear in the community that among advocates that we would be sort of initiating this type of draconian response, and it is far, far from that. We are really doing kind of the opposite of that. I feel like I've taken up a lot of time, and I know there's not much time left. I want to make sure that I leave time for Katie and BHA's presentation, and any other questions that come up. So I will leave it there. There's a lot of other stuff that we're doing, but I think I highlighted the most important things that we're working on right now that your audience might be interested in.
No, that Kirsten, that's awesome. And you're only here once a month, so take all the time you need. I think we're all like, it's all good. But I did want to ask you, with this point in time, could you go over this from the perspective of the county? Like, I've gone over these, and
Yeah.
I know how I interpret them, but what does it mean to Kirsten Jewell and
Yeah.
the
Good.
county?
Well, first of all, I have to give the caveat that the point in time count is a very limited tool. It is an imperfect non-scientific data gathering exercise that we go through once a year. We know it's an undercount. The methodology by its very nature changes from year to year. So I'm always reluctant to give too much weight to what we see in the point in time count, because it's one 24-hour period out of a year. It doesn't capture information about everybody who's experiencing homelessness. Not everybody answers all of the questions. So even though we can produce this nice data summary that looks really good, you know, when you go into it, you'll see that only 38% of the people answered this question, or, you know, this was a limited, it's a very limited data set. And so I'm really reluctant to give it too much weight. The reason that we do it is because it is a requirement of the federal and state government that we do it. And the federal government still uses it as a basis for some of the funding that comes to the county. Unfortunately, every time we have the opportunity, we tell them how much we think this isn't a really good way to measure the need and all that. But it is, we're still sort of stuck in this as a data collection point. We did a very different methodology in 2022. We didn't do a point in time count in 2021. It was the first time in my memory that requirement was waived by the federal government due to the pandemic. So there was no point in time count in 2021. In 2022, the state requested a waiver from the federal government to do it a month later than usual. So typically it's done at the end of January. This year it was done at the end of February, because if you might remember, at the end of January, we were deep in the pandemic, and a lot of concern about sending people out to do surveying and all of that. So, and then the other thing that was different is that, you know, our staff typically coordinates all of the 120 or so volunteers that go out and do surveying. We recognize that we did not have the capacity to do that this year with all of the other pandemic related work that we were doing. So we hired Northwest Hospitality to do a bunch of the volunteer coordination, because they were extremely well positioned with their experience coordinating volunteers and doing outreach into encampments. So they actually did a lot of the organizational work for the point in time count data collection this year, which is different than in prior years. And the last thing that was really different this year is that we didn't do the Project Connect events. So every other year that we've done the point in time count for the last 5 years or so, we've had Project Connect events, which are these giant services fairs, really large one held at Salvation Army, where we attract people in who need things, and we give away tents and sleeping bags and, you know, flu shots and vet care and all these different things. And in the last few years, we've expanded that to have one in North Kitsap area and South Kitsap. Well, this year we didn't do any of those Project Connect events. So again, I'm just trying to say the methodology for this year was so different than other years that we've done it. And so I don't know how much weight to give to the data that we collected here. That said, what it's telling us is that we had an unsheltered, so we divided into sheltered and unsheltered. So sheltered are people who are staying in emergency shelters, and those folks are kind of automatically counted by the virtue of them staying in a shelter bed. This year we had 150 additional shelter beds than we had the last time we did the point in time count in 2020. So that is a huge change as well. So we would expect to see a lot fewer people living outside, even if that number the number of people overall, people experiencing homelessness, had stayed the same. We'd expect to see many more who were sheltered, and that is exactly what we saw. We saw quite a few more people staying in emergency shelters. The unsheltered count is when we go out and do the surveying and try to find people living in tents or abandoned buildings or vehicles across the county. And we saw just a fewer than we had seen in the pre-pandemic count in 2020. 2020, we found 199 people. In 2022, we found 183. Again, this is only representative of the number of people that we can find with our volunteers during that 24-hour period who are also willing to take our survey. So we sort of look at this and think, didn't change very much. We had 150 more shelter beds open, and we had a similar number of people that we could find who were still living outside. So we're kind of seeing that number of unsheltered people hasn't dramatically changed over the last, couple of years. We always think it's interesting to kind of look at where people are living unsheltered across the county. As you might expect, the largest proportion is in Bremerton, and then Port Orchard, and then North Kitsap, Silverdale, and Paulsbo had a smaller number, and then Bainbridge Island was a little less than 10%. So we have people experiencing homelessness all over the county, is my takeaway, and in traditionally higher poverty areas, we have more people who are living unsheltered. The characteristics of homelessness are these are self-reported. People get to tell us what they think their characteristics are. So they declare that I think I have a mental health issue or a substance use issue or physical disability, etc. These numbers track pretty well from year to year. We do have more than half the people reporting a mental health, self-reported mental health issue after living unsheltered. And then in the upper right corner, you can see sort of how the breakdown is of people who are living sheltered versus unsheltered. As I mentioned, we differentiate between those who are staying in a shelter and those who are living out of doors. And you can see how that out of doors breaks down to 19% actually living in the street, 12% in vehicles, 2% in RVs, and less than 1% in abandoned buildings. And then last, one of the questions we get asked very frequently is, how do we know that the people who are experiencing homelessness in Kitsap County are from Kitsap County? So we ask people where their last place of residence was that was permanent. This is not very complete data because only 38% of the folks answered the question, but it is representative of what we've seen year after year after year. It's the same percentages that we get year after year after year, that the vast percentage of people, the vast majority of people are from Kitsap County, and they last lived here and had a permanent address and became displaced and then chose to stay in Kitsap County because that's where they have connections and family and resources and comfort, and they hope to return to stable housing in their own community. It's when you go out and work with people who are living in an encampment in Port Orchard, most of them don't even want to go to a shelter in Bremerton, one town over, or a hotel room at one town over. They want to stay in their community and in their city because that's where they feel is their home, their hometown. And that is borne out by these numbers. So 80% last had their permanent residence in Kitsap County. The other 20% year to year is pretty consistent. Sometimes it fluctuates a little bit between other Washington counties and out of state, but roughly, half of the others came from another Washington county, and then the others came from out of state, but that's a relatively small percentage. And then causes of homelessness, we see this is again self-reported. Only unsheltered households are asked this question. And the most frequently reported causes of homelessness are health issues and mental health issues, job loss, inability to work, eviction, and loss of housing. Hope that answered my question. Sorry, I'm looking at Jeff's.
Did. I'll read it out loud for people that are driving and listening. So Jeff says, of the people who are experiencing homelessness, though, this is an excellent statistically valid summary of who the people experiencing homelessness are. It is an accurate undercount, but an accurate measure of who these people are. And he also said, that's my take. We would need a measure of homeless per square feet for the accurate count, in my opinion. One thing that I wanted to say and then wanted to hear from Katie and Matt on this point in time count is this. There is a lot of contention around serving the homeless population and finding these scarce resources, and one big way to try to get people rowing in the same direction is having conversations. And I think this is really important to hear, the county say, hey, look, this isn't the most accurate thing that we can do. We've got to do something. The government is requiring this, and this is what we have. And a lot of times folks that are trying to help on the other side don't understand the perspective of agencies or the county or the city or whatever the case may be. I think that's really helpful and powerful to share your perspective on that, and how you look at it and what the numbers say, according to the county. Matt and Katie, any thoughts on the point in time count, or my comment?
Go ahead, Kate. I can follow up.
One thing that stuck out to me is it might be an undercount, but it seems consistent with prior years as far as the numbers. And from our perspective, something is better than nothing, as long as it's not. If we, as long as we acknowledge that it's not so far off that it would actually be hurting our agencies, like seeing the numbers and being like, oh, I guess we're doing fine in that area or something like that. So I think something is definitely better than nothing, and we can only do our best and acknowledge it and keep going and trying to improve.
That spurs a question, Kirsten. So if folks don't want to take this survey, then do you not get to count them?
It depends. There's always an it depends. We are able to collect some data about them, but we work really hard to not duplicate data. So, for example, if you have one surveyor collecting information and you have somebody who doesn't want to take a survey, they can record that this was a person that appeared to be in X age category, appeared to be this gender, and was surveyed in this specific location. If we get another survey from a different surveyor that is very similar to that, then we can't be sure that it isn't the same person. So we have to toss out at least one of those surveys. And so it becomes complicated to have very basic data about some people, because if they don't want to fill out our survey, we do want to acknowledge that they were somebody who was living outside, but we have to be careful about trying to not duplicate them or double count them. But we don't make anybody take the survey. It's completely voluntary. And you know what? A lot of people don't really mind. They're happy to talk to somebody and share their story. And, to Katie's point, I totally agree. Some data is better than no data. Most jurisdictions consider the point in time count to be like a 2.5 to 3 times undercount. So that means that to get a more accurate number, you might multiply the number by 2.5 to 3 times. But we
That's
don't
helpful.
we don't have any. I mean, that's just the rule of thumb, kind of, but there's no statistical like validation of that I'm aware of. And I appreciate Jeff saying that it's a statistical sample. I think it's a sample, right? So we might be able to say, yeah, about X percentage of people experiencing homelessness in Kitsap have these characteristics, but that's about all I can say with any confidence. And we call this a minimum number, right? So we know that there's a minimum of this number of people unsheltered outside because we actually talk to all of them, and there are likely many, many, many more.
And Matt, we'll take your comments offline because Kirsten has a hard stop. But the last question that I had for you, really quickly, Kirsten, was if anyone's listening that is lived experiencing homelessness right now, what could they expect next year when the point in time count happens? Is this weaponized against them? How can this potentially help them?
Yeah, no, there's no, I would not say that there's any weaponization or negative consequence to filling out the point in time count survey. It actually helps our community get more funding for homelessness if we can give more accurate information to the state and federal government. So there's no sort of downside to filling out the survey. One of the things that we're doing right now is working, I think, at the Housing and Homelessness Coalition meeting next week. There's going to be kind of a call for people who are interested in working on the point in time count and the Project Connect for 2023. And the decisions have not yet been made about whether we will have Project Connect events and whether the county staff will try to coordinate the effort again, or whether we will contract that out, or whether there'll be any different methodology and how we do the point in time count. All of the decisions are still up in the air, but this is about the time of year that we typically start getting together a community of people, a committee of people who want to work on the Project Connect and point in time count. So there'll be a call for that, I think, at the meeting next week.
All right. So everyone tune in because we broadcast that live.
We encourage people with lived experience of homelessness, whether they're currently experiencing homelessness or have experienced it in the past, to be part of these efforts because they have unique knowledge and experience that helps us do a better job finding people and making the process work better for people who are providing the information, providing the data. So we would welcome their participation.
All right. Well, Kirsten has a hard stop. She's 2 minutes over. I appreciate you tremendously.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
That sure went that hour went by really fast.
You know, you say that every month. It does go by quick. It's super quick. Lots of information. But we appreciate
and I really appreciate the venue, the opportunity to share this with people, especially my long description of the Central Kitsap Community Council meeting. I wanted people who weren't at that meeting to be able to kind of hear what we talked about and kind of what was described, because it was an important opportunity to provide information about our in-camping outreach. So thank you for the opportunity to share that with everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to go ahead and say goodbye to Kirsten. Thank you so much for joining us again.
Yeah. Goodbye. Thanks.
See you later. As we were saying, you will be able to catch her next week for the Housing Coalition meeting. So they will be having those conversations. But Matt, let's get your thoughts on the point in time count or anything that was said based on this conversation.
Yeah, I think, Marwan, I think what you're bringing up is some of what some advocates, have brought up is the issue of, surveying folks, and is that more harmful, right? Is that am I picking that up correctly, Marwan?
Well, from some of the conversations, we're working on planning to create a space for everyone to be in the same room. And some of the reports have been, when agencies have come down to feed folks that are experiencing homelessness, and the police show up, and it's like, okay, is this a trap? Are you, maybe they're hiding to protect themselves and not be exposed to danger. So, it's really hard to build trust with that population, especially when, from their experience, they feel like all these negative things are being done to them and not for them. And so I think it's important to hear, the folks that are in power, that are, in charge of having this point in time count or the community needs assessment, which we need to talk about, or, whatever the case may be, that no, this is actually here to help you. There's not going to be a negative consequence. They're not trying to, count and identify who you are to come and get you and find out where you are or anything like that. It really is. If the numbers are two to three times more, if Kitsap County could count that, that would potentially double or triple the revenue that would come into this county to be able to serve this population, right? It's kind of like the census. It's the same thing, right? There's a lot of folks that are resistant to taking the census.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right, and that's something we do take really seriously. But Marwan, I so appreciate you allowing, you're right, the county and KCR and BH, all of us to kind of talk about some of our pressures and some of our motivations, because it is so easy for folks, like you say, right? Of like, if we're out there and the police show up, or sometimes if we're even working with police, for that to be interpreted in a different light, right? And very understandable. And yeah, I think Kirsten did a great job. I'll just speak from our perspective. From the community action side, is we don't, our guiding ethos is we don't do stuff that the community doesn't want or need, right? Is our whole ethos is we have to have feedback from the community we're serving to help drive our decision making. And we've talked about that with the community needs assessment, but the point time count feeds that same loop, right? Is that we want to actually, where do we focus? We have services from Port Orchard to North Kitsap to Bremerton, and we rightly focus all the services in Bremerton, right? Because that's what the data is showing us. Also, yeah, how effective is outreach, or how much should we be investing in outreach, or how, right? I mean, these are, it's not the only thing, but it's also a piece that drives. So it is, from that perspective, it's kind of in line of, and we use the point in time count when we're applying for grants and when we're trying to get more money. So it all is a compounding effort that starts with, even though it's bad data, or not bad data, it's incomplete data, and we all know that, right? It's never the whole picture, we know that, but it's still a base which we try to use with the ultimate motivation of helping the community, right? This is an issue, and we're trying to get more money, but that is a balance, right? And we know, our clients tell us this. They get sick of telling their story over and over again. They get sick of filling out paperwork, right? It's like endless paperwork just to get help. No one fills out paperwork as much as unhoused folks do, right? They're constantly filling out paperwork. So we always try to at least have that and be informed and offer choice. And when our teams, we train our pit count folks. A lot of them are outreach workers, right? And we always try to give as much options as we can, right? If they want us to fill it out for them, if they want to fill it out, if they only want to answer a few questions, right? We also try to double it up. So a lot of times we have our outreach workers there that are able to do coordinated entry assessments, right? If they want to be, go through the coordinated entry process, we can do it right there, right? We're not having to double up. We have hygiene in kits, right? So we try to make it beneficial. So we do try to be as sensitive as we can to that, because we know it's, it's frustrating, it's traumatizing to kind of re-talk about this, and it can feel threatening. So, and if people don't want to, like Kirsten said, we just mark down where, just a general description and let them be. But there's definitely the tension there. It's not perfect, but I think from the agency perspective, we do some baseline data, right, in order to kind of show that there's an issue, to get funding, right, to actually make decisions and to have good feedback information, because that's a big point for myself, and I know for KCR, is we want feedback loops from our end users to help drive decisions, and that's something we don't do enough of. We're trying to do more, but we want that to drive approaches, and this is kind of in that ballpark.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think individuals and organizations that go out and feed and try to provide services, whatever that is, the prayer walkers, you know,
Yeah.
those conversations, right? Because those are frontline workers. They're there. They
Mm-hmm.
have the relationships, can share and say, hey, if you didn't hear this podcast and you didn't hear Kirsten or Matt or Jill or, one of the other organization, leaders, or those that have the purse strings to really make things happen, they're not trying to use this against you. They're trying to use this to help you. And then when that point in time count comes up, folks will know about it beforehand and say, okay, we're going to make sure that we're counted during this time, because that means more money is going to come in, and maybe that means building a second Pendleton place, or more resources
Mm-hmm.
that come into this county. That's what I mean by all of us rowing in the same direction, right? I mean, we have so many different opportunities to grow and kind of build together. Katie,
No,
any oh, go ahead. Sorry about that, Matt.
No, I would just agree with you. I think that's what's so good about the conduit and the pancake breakfast is, yeah, not everyone is on board, right? Some of the prayer rocks, some of the folks that we don't connect with as much, right, but are actually still from folks that are unhoused. They see all these folks and they don't know. It's always better if we can talk to each other and they understand the point in time count. So if they have a trusted relationship with someone that's experiencing homelessness, someone, oh yeah, at the point in time count, this is why, right? So that's what, just a plug for what you're doing with trying to connect everybody, and the coalitions work too, right? Of getting, that's what the coalition is there for, to get us all rowing in the same direction. So yeah. Anyways, sorry, Katie.
Go ahead, Katie.
Were you asking about follow-up for this conversation? I know I haven't made any updates.
Yes, and then we have to get to your updates. You're super patient.
Well, I think I definitely have a different, limited perspective on this, as much as Kirsten's team and Matt's team work in this every day. And I love what you said, Matt, about we don't provide things the community doesn't want, and that's hard if you don't have the data to know what they want or need, or if you do need to do something because of a requirement. But it's a great thing to live by as we try to provide services that are supportive and improve living conditions. So it's kind of, this platform with the conduit and everything is a great place to talk about this, because these are kind of gray areas that we don't get to talk about much. So it's just kind of my perspective on it. I think the county and KCR and everybody working in this is doing an amazing job, and we definitely are supportive of whatever we need to do to again gather the data so we can act on the data. And it reminds me of the community needs assessment. It's still happening until September 30th. So there's a platform right now where we can, submit our, share your voice or submit your information or do what you can to kind of guide KCR and all the other agencies utilizing the data. So there's my little plug.
Will you give us our BHA updates? Because there's something that came into my email today telling me, hey.
So are you joining Ready to Rent tomorrow, Marwan?
Well, I won't be able to take the class, unfortunately, but I wish I could.
Okay. I'll let Lori know. Lori was going to join, but she had to leave at 4. So I was going to surprise you. I was going to say, hey.
Oh, yeah. You know what? If she lets me miss, a few of the classes, then I might be able to jump in.
Well, as a service provider, she might be a little more flexible because you would want to observe and be part of really understanding the feedback that's happening. So as we have talked about in the past on the conduit, this is Ready to Rent. The class actually is closed for signups now because it starts tomorrow, and it's a 6-week renter education course, completely free, that we're providing to the community. Just to help, because it's so hard to find housing. Not just find housing, that's only the first step. Apply for housing. When you have higher barriers like poor credit score or something like that, like how do you get to the top of the list? How do you get approved for housing? So we just want to give people the best chance they possibly can to succeed in their housing search. So this is one of the tools we have, and this is the first class. I think we did it in 2010. This is the first one since then. So it's exciting, and there's a lot to learn, and it's 6 weeks. So it's quite a commitment. It's 6 weeks, 2 hours a week. But you'll end up with a certificate and all sorts of great knowledge to support housing search and for anybody to share that information with others. That's kind of the exciting part, is like just to get that out and get some more education in the community.
Well, if Lori will give me some grace to dip in and dip out, I will definitely come.
Yeah, I'll ask her. You should email her.
I'll email her? Okay, I'll email her.
Yeah, so that's exciting. Those are exciting things happening. And I don't know if I have much updates this week. Maybe next week, though. I don't have much updates for Bremerton Housing Authority. I know Jill was supposed to join us, and we were actually going to have a deep dive topic today, but we got into all the the great updates from Kirsten. I'm so happy that she's joining us. And so maybe we'll share most of my updates for next week.
Well, and in Jill's defense, she did jump on, but I was waiting for a break, and so she jumped off because Kirsten was in the middle of her presentation. So it's like Jill did show up, everyone. Just so you know, she is
Of course,
consistent for sure. So she was in the background.
Yes, but
so
we'll
this is
share. We'll be
fantastic.
first next week, Marwan. We'll be first next week.
Okay. Well, yeah, and remember, next week is the Kitsap Housing and Homelessness Coalition meeting, which we broadcast live here.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like you're not going to want to miss this next week because that discussion on volunteers and point and time count and all that good stuff is going to take place next week. So please join us. Remember, the first week, we kind of touch base with each other. Sometimes there's data, depending on what happens. The second week is our deep dive, which is what we just had. The third week is our coalition meeting. Week 4 is the pancake breakfast. How tasty. And then if there's a week 5, we do data and, it's dealer's choice. And, there's always updates. There's always great things going on. We do promise it might not happen this year, but we have folks come on. Like, we had the DE&I folks from BHA come on, which was awesome. We had, is it Jason from the HARP program? His name isn't Jason, is it?
Jared.
Jared, thank you. And it was something with a J. Jared, come on from the HARP program. But we'll work on getting more folks to come on. A lot of folks get a little bit shy when it comes time to being on camera, one, but then being live on camera is a double nervousness and makes folks pretty anxious. So it's really interesting to watch some folks that can command some pretty large rooms. Like Tony gets a little nervous when he's on the podcast, Matt. So it's pretty funny to watch him in a room and then watch him on the podcast. It's like, Tony, why are you nervous? So
Can I say something though? You definitely make this a comfortable, like if anybody out there is thinking about getting on the podcast, Marwan makes it super comfortable, super conversational, and I guess there's a benefit of doing Zoom for the last couple of years. Is like at first when we all started doing it and being on camera, it's like, this is odd. Do I talk to the camera? Do I talk to my document? Things like that. But you make it super comfortable. So anybody who questions it or is hesitant, I think that this is a great start to kind of getting out there.
Yeah, come on down. And if we have to put you in witness protection, we can do it this way too, where you can hear the voice but not see the face. So just make your voice heard. We can do a lot of different things to make it happen.
I agree with Katie. It's super easy to come on, and it's really, it's been a lot of info. Yeah, it is funny that it does feel different than a big group. I like the in-person better, but I also see the benefit of this, right? It's easy to connect and it's easy to, and then the recording it is a lot easier on this front. So I know I think there's value to both methods, but it is interesting that people have different preferences, right?
Well, all of the above. That isn't that what equity is, right? It's trying to give people what they need in the format they need it in.
Yep. That's right.
That's it.
There it is.
Well, we are at 4:19. And we always say we're going to try to keep this to an hour. This is about a 75-minute show. Honestly, it's about an hour and 15 minutes. That's about what happens. We usually get started like 5 after, but that's what it is. So tune in. But of course, that's what's so great. It is recorded. You can watch it later. You can piecemeal it. You can watch 20 minutes here, 10 minutes there. You can fast forward. I'm trying to do some things where folks are kind of highlighted when they're speaking. So it's like, oh, I need to hear what Kirsten had to say. I can go right to Kirsten's part and I see her superimposed and I know that she's talking. So it's a lot easier for you to kind of find your place there. Don't have enough time yet to put in, time markers for subjects, but, all in due time. We're just flying the plane while we build it, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I appreciate everyone. Again, we don't have a city council meeting, right? But we will be back next week again. So stay tuned for that. I want to thank our co-host today, Katie, Matt, Kirsten, and Jill, because she was here. Uh, and this is the Conduit Network, and we will see you guys next week. All right, everyone.